Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1303. Today on Cars Yeah, I'm celebrating the Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance, an annual event that takes place on June 9th in Ault Park, Cincinnati, Ohio. To learn more, go to ohioconcours.com.
Don't expect more than you're willing to give.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, automotive enthusiasts. I'm revved up and so excited to introduce today's very special guest calling in from Cincinnati, Ohio, Carl Iseman. Hey, Carl, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I'm ready to go when you are.
All right. Carl Iseman is a board member and Concours chairman for the Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance, an annual event that takes place on June 9th in Ault Park, Cincinnati, Ohio, and has been an ongoing event since 1978. While his career included being a hospital CEO and owner of several marketing research companies, Carl's passion for cars, and Porsches in particular, included being the president of the, and you'll have to help me with this, the Drie Staaten Gruppe? Am I saying that right, Carl?
Drie Staaten Gruppe.
Drie Staaten Gruppe. My German is failing me today. And of course, that's a Porsche 356 and early 911 club, and a member of the Porsche Club of America and the 356 Registry, two clubs of which I'm a member of. His garage has included 12 Porsches, a Triumph TR4, MGB GT, several BMWs, and a 1948 Chevrolet Woody. Very cool. So, Carl, I've told our listeners just a little bit about you. Would you take a brief moment, share a little bit more about your career, the Concours, and, of course, a very obvious passion for old automobiles?
I talk about my career when I think about all the hassles I went through as a young hospital administrator. I started very, very young in the field. In fact, ran a teaching hospital when I was age 34. And one of the things that really impressed me about working in hospitals and working with people who are very highly educated is ways of getting through to people that are meaningful and helpful. Because of that, most of my work was in physician relations and bringing new technology to physicians. And then all of a sudden, I find myself lusting after 40 and 50-year-old cars. And, you say to yourself, how does that work? With all the technology that you work with on a daily basis, you come home and you drive a car that doesn't even have fuel injection. Well, that's because I was so tired of working on 12-hour days and dealing with all the issues that surround healthcare that I decided that my work outside of healthcare was going to be on the thing that I love the most. And I've been buying old sports cars since I was 16 years old and working on them with my dad, who was a bit of a tinkerer for many years. So just love the old cars and really very proud of what my administration did at University Hospital here in Cincinnati. And just to plug it, University Hospital is a trauma center that caters basically to the indigent population. And many, many years ago, we decided that we could expand our scope by opening up one of the very first aeromedical programs, a helicopter-based medical program where we could send teams of doctors and nurses out to critically ill patients who might have crashed on a highway many miles away or were too sick to be transported and were in a small community hospital. That became really the ultimate accomplishment of my administration, and one that continues today, 30 years later, as one of the most active and most well-respected aeromedical programs in the country. So I was able to do that while still playing around with Porsches.
Well, you're a fortunate guy for sure, and congratulations on building a center that helps so many people. That has to be massively rewarding, but I can't imagine running a hospital and managing a team of very, very intelligent people, physicians, and all the different intricacies involved there. So I would think it makes running a Concours a piece of cake, but I say that tongue in cheek because Concours events are very, very challenging as well. And we're going to learn about that. But first, as we continue on your journey, I always like to start with a success quote or a mantra. It's a nice way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars Yeah. So Carl, take the wheel.
Well, I thought about that quite a bit. And there's one thing that I always say to people when I first meet them, when I work with them, and that is, don't expect more than you're willing to give. Concours require a lot of people. In fact, we have close to 500 volunteers that support the Concours throughout the year and the 3-day Concours weekend. We always look for people not only who have the dedication to cars, but a dedication to making sure that people enjoy the whole gestalt, if you will, of the old car hobby and what we do for juvenile arthritis. Because our main thrust, other than putting on a great series of shows, is to generate enough money to support kids with juvenile arthritis here in the greater Cincinnati area. And why I'm so proud of that is because, you're probably like me. Every day you get hundreds of requests for donations to major national charities.
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder, where does all this money go? And a couple of months later, you get back this big glossy, annual report. And that bothers me that the money is being spent on that rather than on the kids. Our focus is, this is for the 10 or 20 or 30,000 kids in our tri-state area who have juvenile arthritis. Our main focus is making sure that they and their families get the kind of support and treatment and expertise that can only be found in the local community. So we do a really good job of that. I'm very proud of it.
Well, you should be. There's a couple great things about this. One thing is I've talked to people who aren't, let's say, car people. They're not enthusiasts, quote unquote. And they talk about, well, all these fancy people going to these car shows, it just seems like a bunch of show-offs. And I always say, well, wait a minute. Most of the major Concours events, if not all, have very worthy causes they raise money for. When you look at an event like yours or Pebble Beach or Concorso Italiano or even some of the other shows that are around Amelia Island, I mean, it goes on and on. They all raise tremendous amounts of money, in some cases, millions of dollars that they give to charities. Most of them are affecting children's hospitals or causes like you have. So I always remind people of that. And I love your quote because you're right. Don't expect more than you're willing to give. That works in so many capacities. It works in relationships. It works in your business. It works in your life. Be willing to give more than you expect back. And you know what? You'll get an awful lot back. So I love that. Very, very nicely done. And congratulations on the monies that you're raising. Let's talk about a story that instigated that personal passion you have for cars. Tell us about a pivotal moment in your life when you knew you were indeed a car guy.
Well, it's funny. My dad always used to say to me he couldn't figure out why I was so hung up on cars when I was young. But my dad, when he came back from World War II, started working with a company that was one of the first to do extruded plastics for both cars and bicycles. And so our house was always covered with catalogs and magazines and stuff like that. And of course, the catalogs back then had scantily dressed women showing off the latest gear and the latest bearing and that type of stuff. But, my dad was a tinkerer. And the funny story about my dad was he always fixed everything, but there were always leftover parts. And I could never figure out. So if my dad was working on a clock, the clock would run, the alarm would work, but there'd be a pile of little extra parts. And so when I started, when I was 15 and a half, my dad said to me, it's about time you had a car because we lived outside of the range of the bus route to go to school. And my parents always left the house very early to go to work. So my dad said to me, if you find a car you like, you buy the car and I'll pay for the insurance. I said, Dad, why don't we flip that? Because I think the car's going to be worse. He said, no, your objective is to get a car that's $1,000 or less.
Yeah.
And my dad and I probably spent 6 months driving all over the New York metropolitan area to all these older classic sports car shops. And we found this gorgeous British racing green TR4 with oversized wire wheels and these big fog lights hanging off the front grille. And I said to my dad, I'm in love. And it was, that car was just spectacular. And of course, it was the first car I ever owned. And of course, no one knew this, but I was driving it without a license every morning to go to school. So at that point, I said to myself, this is really going to be fun because this is just the start of what I want to do. But the car was fantastic. I used to stick a 10-foot surfboard in that to go surfing at the local beach when school was over and it was during the summer. So,
oh my gosh.
and to finalize that, I met this young woman. Her name was Diane, who I ultimately became my wife. But she hung around me because she thought I had such a cool car.
There you go.
And I said to her, well, come surfing with me. And if you stand up on the surfboard for the first time, there'll be a second date. 43 years later, I'm still stuck with the same old wife who I love and adore, who doesn't surf anymore, but she loves me and my cars. So
that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, you might not want to call her your old wife, but we won't. We'll just edit that part out of the show. But I love this story for a variety of reasons because I grew up in Southern California. I was a surfer. There was a neighbor on our street that had a Triumph TR4, and I wanted that car so bad. But it was always broken down. And when I got my second car, my first car, I don't talk much about because it was kind of an old grandma's car. But my second car, a Carmen Ghia, my dad said, well, do you want a car you'll be working on all the time, or do you want a car that will actually run most of the time? And he talked me into the Carmen Ghia, but I always loved that TR4. I still think about those cars. I just love the looks of them. And I can't imagine sticking a surfboard in a 10-foot surfboard, especially because when I was surfing, the boards had kind of gone short. But I understand completely. So there you go. Wonderful story. Well, let's take a look at some of the roads you've driven and talk about a big challenge or a big failure that you faced along the way. I would love for you to share this for a variety of reasons, but mainly to share the experience so that we can learn what you learned, how you came out of it on a positive end. So take it away.
All right. Well, I already mentioned University Hospital, and that really is where I grew up and learned about not only business, but life as well. As I think I mentioned, University Hospital, back then it was called the Cincinnati General Hospital, but it was, in essence, the poor people's hospital, the indigent care hospital, the hospital nobody wanted to go to unless they were stabbed or shot. And I came there at the request of my mentor, who I'd met when I was a student in Boston. And he said to me, this is the crummiest hospital I've ever worked at, but my objective is to make this the Harvard of the Midwest. And when he said that to me, and I had gone to school in Boston, not at Harvard, but Boston University, I thought, boy, this sounds like a lot of fun. And after about a year and a half of him cajoling me, I finally signed on and moved from New York City to Cincinnati. And it was a rough conversion. Nobody really wanted to do what this guy Vito and I wanted to do, and it took many, many years to convince the community that they needed a teaching hospital, not just an indigent care hospital. Well, year to year, we kept working, and we were, of the 34 hospitals in our region, we were ranked number 32. And my boss, Vito, said to me, one day we're going to be in the top 5. And so we did everything that we possibly could to do that. And much of that meant pleading, cajoling, explaining to people why it was so important to have a teaching hospital and getting the faculty on board with that. And slowly but surely, the faculty became on board. They got behind us on so many things, but Vito, my boss, was a real change agent, and he was a pretty gruff character. And he was slowly becoming persona non grata at the medical center level. And one day, I get this letter from the director of the medical center saying, Vito is out, you're in. And I said, what do you mean I'm in? He said, the faculty has circulated an email, not an email, what do you call it?
A memo or something?
A petition that they would accept no one else to run the hospital but you.
Wow.
Of course, that made my heart flicker. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm 34 years old. This is $100 million business. How do I do it?
Right.
And I went back to my roots and said, my expertise has always been dealing with people and making people feel like they were valued and important. And I went back and talked to all the department chairmen, said, do you really want me to do this? If you really want me to do this, it's got to be we got to do this, not I've got to do this.
Yeah, well, there you go.
After a 4-year period and a lot of hard work and the inclusion of our aeromedical program, I left there feeling really good as we were rated number 2 of the 34 hospitals in the greater Cincinnati area. So,
oh my gosh. Wow. Well, congratulations. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to imagine a 34-year-old. Now, obviously, you'd been there for a while, but being handed the reins of something like that and taking it on, and especially a hospital that is dealing with indigent people and tough times and hard. And I mean, I can't even imagine, but you've got to feel very rewarded. As I know you're retired now, but the fact that you got you guys up to number 2 out of 30-something, I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. Let me ask you this, because there's a lot of people listening out there that are business related. This is very much a car show, but also entrepreneurship, business related. If there's one thing, and I know there's a multitude of things you did, but if there's one thing you can identify that was very, very good for your career and helping you achieve your goals, what was it?
I think it was being me, being open, being accessible. They used to say I never slept because they'd always find me in the hospital. And if I wasn't in the hospital, I was at home working on hospital issues. But
Yeah.
I think the thing that I take the most pride in is that I just have a way with people. And it's funny because my wife always says it's mostly the women. But, yesterday was my 69th birthday, and I got a bunch of
happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I got a bunch of Facebook emails, mostly from women friends that Diane and I know. And, I think it's really just coming down to the basic level is we're all in this together. Life is tough, and if we don't need any more people making life tougher than it is. And if we work together, as we did, we went from a hospital where the doctors wouldn't talk to the support staff to where the doctors and the support staff put on a big carnival every year, and we put the chief of surgery on one of these galleys that you throw a ball at and it drops them in the water.
Yeah, the dunk tank.
The dunk tank. And that was just one of the elements that people said, we're starting to feel like human beings now. We're all understand what the focus of our endeavor should be, and we've got to work together. And I take a great amount of pride in not what I did so much, but what they did. What they did as a group, that was the most important thing for me.
Well said, and congratulations. It's a team. Most definitely is that way in everything in life for sure. Well, let's have a little bit of fun and talk about your first really special vehicle. Now, I know you have an old Porsche 356 you've had for 40 years. Maybe that's the car you want to talk about, but is there a special car that you want to share some special memories about?
Well, actually, it is that my 60 Cabriolet. When I was a student in Boston, and I didn't have a car back then, I was hitchhiking from Cambridge back into Boston where I lived, and I get picked up by this old, ratty, rusted out Porsche. And for some reason, it just hit me in the right place. And after this guy drove me back to my house and we talked about Porsches, I said to him, one of these days, I'm going to own one. Well, 6 months later, I'm out seeing a friend of mine out in the suburbs, and there's this 356 coupe. And I said, so who owns it? He said, I don't know. It's been sitting here for months. No one seems to know who owns it. So I said, well, you know something? The next time I come back, if it's still here, I'm going to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and see if I can get the car as an abandoned car. So it turned out it didn't get back there for 6 months. The car was gone. Well, fast forward to about 6 years. We're moving from New York City into Cincinnati. And I sent pictures of 356s to all of my friends from graduate school saying, if you ever see a car like this, let me know. Well, a couple of weeks goes by, and my friend Bob calls me at 2:00 in the morning, stumbling out of a bar in Dayton, Ohio, and he says, you're not going to believe it. I found your car. I said, what do you mean? He said, I was relieving myself against the big snowbank, and I looked down, and there's this taillight that looked like the taillight of the picture you sent me. So I jump in the car, run up to Dayton, and sure enough, in 8 feet of snow pile, there was this beautiful but rusted out 356 Cabriolet with a removable hardtop on it. I said, this is the car. Something tells me this is the car. So I went home, tried to contact the owner. It took me 6 months to contact the owner. Finally made a deal on it. And, just as frame of reference, we haggled on price. And I finally got the car in what supposedly was running condition for $800.
Wow.
So
yeah.
I left the car up at this shop, and I said, look, I just want to get the car home, make sure it's in running order and it's safe enough for me to drive it home, because it was a 35-mile drive down to my home. He said, no problem. I wait 2 weeks. We go up to pick up the car. My wife is following me. We're driving down Interstate 71 in the left lane, doing about 75 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the car dies.
Uh-oh.
I pull over into the left lane, pop the rear hood, can't find anything wrong, try to start the car, wouldn't. Diane pulls up behind me. Now, she's wearing her high heels. She had just come home from work. She said, don't worry, I'll push start you.
Oh, gosh.
So I jump into the car. She starts pushing the car, and it was a little bit downhill, and I'm watching her flailing away in her high heels.
In her high heels.
And what happened was the battery slid against one of the ground strap, and the car started again. She jumps back into her car. We drive the car home, and I said, thank God I got it. And she said to me, you owe me a new pair of shoes. I said, what do you mean?
I'll bet.
Said, my heels broke off as I was running.
I'll bet.
That's the car that we've had that was 1978. So we've had it for 41 years. And
Wow.
parenthetically, about 3 years ago, there was a flood here in our neighborhood, and I ended up having 4 feet of muddy water in my garage, which covered my 356.
Oh, no.
And that picture I sent you, though, is that 356 18 months later back to its former glory as a show-winning car.
Oh, my gosh. What a wild story. Well, I'm glad it's still with you. Do you have a seller's remorse story, a car you've let go? I know you've sold some cars over the years that you really wish you had back parked next to that Porsche.
Oh, yeah. And there's a car we called Woody. It was a 1948 Chevy Woody Wagon. As I said earlier, our first date, my wife and I went surfing. And Diane said, I've always wanted a Woody Wagon. Well, I forgot about it completely. 30 some odd years later, we're on Martha's Vineyard on vacation with another couple. And we rented this house and felt really comfortable in the house. And I said to the real estate agent, is this house for sale? She said, yes. And so, one of these spur of the moment things, the other couple and Diane and I said, why don't we buy this house? Well, we drove around the neighborhood for a while and we saw a Woody Wagon sitting under a tarp. And Diane said, we're getting this house because there's a Woody there. I want the Woody and the house. So we spent 7 years restoring that car, and it was a mess. We only replaced about 5% of the wood on it, and it's mahogany and ash. So it was beautiful wood, but it needed a lot of work. And we drove that car as our daily driver every summer when we were in Martha's Vineyard. After 15 years, we decided we no longer were going to go to Martha's Vineyard, and we brought the Woody back home to us in Cincinnati, and then we never drove it. And I was talking to a friend who also owns a house in Martha's Vineyard, and he said, so what did you ever do with that Woody? I said, it's sitting in the storage locker, and I feel really bad because I never drive it. It's 17 feet long, 5,200 pounds. It's a behemoth to drive in city traffic. He said, what do you want for it? I told him the number. He said, fine, I'll buy it. And so now that friend of mine is building a garage on Martha's Vineyard specifically to house the Woody. One of the funny stories about that car was Diane wanted a vanity license plate for it. And she kept working with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they didn't like any of her names. And she finally came up with one, and I wonder if you'll recognize it. It spells Stifone. And when they asked her about it, she said, oh, that's a family name. What do you think it is?
I don't know. This is a family show. Well, we'll let the listeners figure that one out. I'm sure there's a few grits out there. I have a good friend. We lost him a few years ago, Bruce Levin. He's a avid car collector up here in the Pacific Northwest. He ran a racing team, Porsche racing team, Bayside Racing.
I know
for
the
years.
name.
Yeah. He had a beautiful Mercury Woody Wagon that was actually a car I got to hang out with one day photographing, and his license plate was, and this tells you a bit about Bruce's, his humor, termites. so that tells you a little bit about that guy. A great guy. Well, let's talk about the Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance. I would love for you to share with our listeners. It's coming up here pretty soon in June 9th, I believe is the right date. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners more about this event, what they can expect to see when they attend.
Well, this is our 42nd year. We believe we're the second oldest Concours in the country after Pebble Beach. And what is so great about this Concours, and it's really a Concours weekend because Friday night we have a formal dinner with a guest speaker and, great food in a great location out in downtown Cincinnati. Then on Saturday, we have a countryside tour, and we usually get between 50 and 70 cars to tour around the city. Then Saturday night, we have a big hangar party where we get close to 700 people and and it's an impromptu car show. And wow. Then Sunday is the big Concours d'Elegance. This year, the theme is mid-century modern, so we're focusing on cars between 1948 and 1965. And as I said in my introduction to the Concours program this year, this is the year of the baby boomer. Because when you think about it, this 48 to 75 was the time when you saw, those big Cadillacs, the 59s and 61 Cadillacs, the Chrysler C and G code cars, right. The Studebakers, the Avantis. And, as I said in my remarks in the program, this is a Concours for the baby boomers. Now, in addition, we have a total of over 20 different classes. This year, we're also honoring MG. from the very beginning to the very end. So we'll have a lot of, MGTAs, PBs, Cs, TBs, anything you can imagine. So a great showing on what I consider to be one of the greatest show fields you'll ever find. So many of these concours are either in a parking lot or on a fairway. Even Pebble Beach is just a long fairway with one notable tree. Well, ours is in the middle of a beautiful, well-manicured park with flowers and bushes, and it's very wide open. It's not like it's, you go to Pebble and you can barely get between the cars. There's plenty of room for the cars. We have one of the things that we do that probably no one else does is we have a junior board of millennials, and they help us plan on things that would attract the younger crowd. So a couple of years ago, we started a craft beer garden. This year, one of our innovations to start addressing the issue of what's going to happen to the next generation of car hobbyists when that $800 Porsche is now an $80,000 Porsche. So we have something called the Legacy Library, and we're giving away to kids 6 to 16 books, magazines, posters, auction catalogs, anything that we think will interest these young kids in, the old car hobby. And we're getting a lot of really good feedback about that. So with the concours coming up in just a couple of weeks, we're actively scavenging for more books and more magazines, and I think it's going to be a great, great show this year, as it always is.
No doubt. I'll encourage our listeners, if you are going to be in the area or you want to go to the area, you can find it at ohioconcours.com. Is that right?
That's it. And there'll be 200 of the finest cars you'll ever see on the show field.
There you go. Very nice. Well, check it out. The Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance, a fantastic, very unique event. Carl, up next is the last lap before we put the pedal to the metal. Let's say thank you to today's Cars Yeah sponsors. Hey, fellow automotive enthusiasts, I'm a huge fan of Covercraft. I've protected my vehicles with their products since 1975. That's right, all the way back to my high school days. Want to keep your vehicle's exterior and interior looking new? It's easy with a Covercraft car cover. A car cover is the best way to keep your vehicle looking great for years to come. Car covers protect your paint from fallout, birds, dust, rain, insects, and pollen. It's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way to keep your vehicle looking new. I use my Covercraft car covers every single day. Right now, you can get 10% off all Covercraft custom car covers or their ready-fit car covers. Plus, they offer you over 15 quality fabrics to choose from. Their spring sale is from April 15th through June 16th, 2019. Order direct at covercraft.com and tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. Covercraft is the right choice. Learn more today at covercraft.com. That's covercraft.com. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. Hey, Mark Green here from Cars Yeah. Did you know you can now see me on the Cars Yeah TV show? It's a weekly visit to some of my past Cars Yeah podcast guests, and I take you along for the ride. You go behind the garage door and into their lives, their businesses, and you get to see what makes them successful. With tens of millions of viewers, Cars Yeah TV is making its mark. Cars Yeah TV is available on MAV TV and Lucas Oil Racing TV. You'll find MAV TV on Direct TV, Fubo TV, Fios by Verizon, or you can stream it through Lucas Oil Racing Television online. And they said I only had a face for podcasting. All right, Carl, we are back, and I have a very introspective question for you, sir. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a car parked on the Concours lawn or in your garage, you were actually manifested as a car, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself, what would Carl be and why?
Well, I thought about that when I got your list, and I thought my favorite car of all time, and I guess the one that appeals to me the most for reasons I'll get into, is a Porsche 904 GTS.
Nice.
The first fiberglass car that Porsche ever made, with a combination, the things that I like the most are form over function. And this is a car that is always interested in me because It's form over function and function over form. That is the most beautiful body I think that Porsche ever made, with the most intricate motor that Porsche ever made, the veritable, four-cam motor. So I thought, that's a great way to stretch myself. If I were ever going to be a car, I'd already feel comfortable in the car, but would I be able to time all those gears that takes weeks and weeks to do for an experienced mechanic? So to me, that's always a challenge. I always look for challenges in my business and in my personal life and with the cars, and that 904 GTS just suits that definition to a T. Yeah,
they're beautiful cars. They've gotten expensive too. I know that I think it's Sotheby's sold one a few years ago for I think it was $1.6 million or something like that.
Oh,
they become very, very expensive, but beautiful cars for sure. Well, Carl, we are entering the last lap. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some very quick blips of that Porsche 904 GTS throttle. So here we go. What's the best automotive advice you've ever received?
Buy the best car you can find, but you must feel comfortable with the car that you own.
Yeah. Best advice of the day for sure. Would you share one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your many successes over the years?
I say what's on my mind. I'm honest with everyone that I speak to. And I really feel like open and honest communications with people is the only way to be. And, whether that's talking to car guys or, business people, what I don't do, which I find a lot of people doing, is they see your car and they point at, did you notice that scratch there? I'm always on, this is a great car. It looks like you really drive it, and there's a big difference there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. How about a resource? Is there one you'd like to share with our listeners?
Because I'm a Porsche guy and principally a 356 owner, the Porsche Registry is the ultimate in being involved with a mark that cares about its members. Locally here, this Staaten group, we have about 60 members, and I've known most of these guys for 30 or 40 years. And if I call my friend Tom and say, Tom, I've got a problem, I don't know how to solve it, he says, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Or somebody will call me and say, have you seen this part? And I'll say, I've got it in my archives. You need it, you got it. To me, the resource of having these guys, most of these guys have had Porsches for at least 20 years. All of them work on their own cars. And, it's great just to sit down with these guys and listen to, the shortcuts they've found, the problems they've had, and the fun that we've had driving these cars all over the country. Because there are very few of our members who don't drive their cars. There are no garage queens here. I've driven my Cabriolet and my coupe as far as Miami, Florida, as west as Arizona, north up into Michigan. Usually it's in a convoy of 5 to 10 of my friends, all of us being in 356s.
Yeah, great group. I've been a member of the 356 Registry for decades. Great group of people. Now, if I could arrange for you to have a drink with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would that be?
Oh, that's easy. That's Jackie Stewart. I don't know if you remember the old Wide World of Sports that was on TV on ABC for many years. But I remember when I was a kid, the first Formula One race I saw was Jackie Stewart winning at Monaco. I loved him because he also was sort of a no bullshit guy. He said what was on his mind. He was very outspoken about safety in Formula One, but he was a gentleman. He was racing it during the era when there were still gentlemen racers. There wasn't a lot of advertising on the cars. There wasn't a lot of, TV coverage. I'd read Road and Track every month to see the results of the races that weren't on the Wide World of Sports. But, Jackie Stewart, and today he's still very much involved with the sport, pushing for better safety requirements, providing a great deal of insight, for the new drivers coming up. So he's just one of these class guys that I'd love to meet.
Yeah, that'd be very good. Love to have him on the show, too. He's very hard to nail down, but I'm working on it. How about a book? Is there a book that you'd like to share with our listeners that you enjoyed reading?
Oh, yeah. And typically, here I go. It's called The ABCs and 912s of Porsche Engines, or Porsche Engines and the Future of the Human Race. It's written by the deceased Harry Pello. Harry was uncompromising, unabashed proponent of 356s. But he always had different ways of doing things. And the book that I have, the ABCs and 912s, is about 2 inches thick, and it's one of only 3 volumes of his stories about breaking down in Tuscaloosa or finding a new way to take off a generator belt without turning the motor off, or you name it, Harry could do it. So great book. and written in a fashion that even I can understand. Non-technical, just right out there. He says it as it is, and it's a fun book to read.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I've got a bunch of his books as well. Well, Carl, we are up to the checkered flag, and this last question can be a bit of a doozy. Today, I'm going to buy you any cool collector car on the planet. Doesn't matter who owns it or where it is. I'm going to park it in your garage. But there are some rules to this game that make it very challenging. One is you can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys with. That little trick's off the table. Number two, I don't think you have a problem with this one. No garage queens. You've got to drive it. But here's the kicker. It's the only collector car you can have in your garage. That means the other cars you have to go, and this is the only one that's parked there. So if you want to keep one of your cars, that's cool. I don't have to buy you a car today. But if I did buy you a car today, what would it be?
Well, my friends who hear this will probably say I'm a heretic, but I've always loved the Ferrari 246 GTS Dino. Just a beautiful, beautiful car. A friend of mine has owned one for many years. He never let me drive it, but I lust after that car because it's got some of the most beautiful lines in the world. It's a rear mid-engine. It's just a colossal car. And of course, today they're unobtainium.
Well, Carl has jumped the Porsche ship here. Oh my gosh. This is we're raising some eyebrows here today. But you know what, Carl? I understand. That car is a beautiful car. It's on my bucket list as well. Back when I was a kid, I had a car detailing business. And Sam Salemi was a guy who lived down in south part of La Jolla, California, where I grew up. And I used to ride my bike over there, and he let me drive his Dino back to my house and detail it. And I always took the long way back to my house and a long way home. They are wonderful cars, not really very fast cars, of course, 2.4 liter Dino engine, transversely mounted, but oh my gosh, it's just the car ticks off all the boxes, and I'd be happy to park one of those in your garage. Just so I get you the right one, what color would you like your Dino to be? Because that car came in a multitude of factory colors.
Yeah. There was it's a silvery blue. I've seen one, and it had a dark blue leather Daytona interior. And nice. I don't know if it was actually a factory color or not, but it hit all the right buttons for me. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous car.
And would you like chairs and flares on that, Dino?
Oh, you bet. You got to have chairs and flares.
All right. We'll make that happen. Oh my gosh. Well, Carl, you've taken me on a great ride today. Really enjoyed your stories. Want to thank you for sharing your journey in the Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance. Could you offer us one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance before you rip off into the sunset in that 246 Dino?
I certainly can. Because I'm retired, I always think retirement can be fun and challenging if you pick the right things to focus on. Yeah. And to me, focusing on something that brings my hobby, my friends, and even my wife together to celebrate something like the Concours, to me, that's the greatest thing. So it's really, a lot of my friends who are thinking about retirement think, I can't retire and I'll have nothing to do. And I keep saying, retiring and working for a cause and coupling that cause with your hobby is the best thing you can do.
Brilliantly said. And you're absolutely right. If you are going to retire, you need to pick something to focus on, because I guarantee you, sitting around is going to kill you faster than anything. So pick a cause. In this case, OhioConcours.com is the way you can find out about the Cincinnati Concours d'Elegance. I encourage you to check it out. If you're going to be in that area later this month in June, this is the event you've got to attend. Carl, by the way, before I say goodbye, I want to do a shout out to past Cars Yeah guest Greg Stanley, who was kind enough to introduce me to Carl. He was interview number 1193. Check that out. Carl, thanks for being so generous today with your time and expertise, and for sharing your experiences and the Concours with our listeners. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Keep the sunny side up.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Mark.
You're welcome. You take care of your cars, but who takes care of your investments? Tune-ups aren't just for engines. Updating your financial plan is important too. Your GPS may take you from A to B, but it won't help you on the road to financial freedom. For that, you need a good co-pilot and a very trusted advisor. Chris Kimball, CFP, is just the man for the job. He'll guide you down that road without driving you crazy. For over 25 years, Chris has helped people just like you and me with their financial planning and investments. With a master's degree in financial services, he is eminently qualified, and he's a car guy too. Learn more at chrisvkimball.com or call 866-ON-A-PLAN. Securities through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Member FINRA SIPC. CK Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.